Likely one of the most commonly asked questions on this channel is, what are the best small cars to buy with a sub £5,000 budget? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. So as has become customary, get your brew at the ready, let's have a bit of a browse. Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Quick favour to ask before we get started, if that's alright, a moment of your time. If you're one of the majority of my viewers routinely watching videos but haven't yet hit the subscribe button, can you please do so? I'm doing my best to grow the channel to 100,000 subscribers this year, so your support would genuinely go a long way to me. Anyway, let's get into it. Thank you. Right, so criteria first off, up to £5,000. That's usually the kind of budget people have when they're looking for a smallish car. We'll also try and include a few options here at lower budget. And up to a 1.4 engine. I've also added this, reason being, well, it's small cars that we're looking at. I know you maybe get the occasional outlier that's got a larger diesel engine, but generally, if it's a small car, nowadays, due to the complexity of modern diesels and road tax situations and stuff, I would generally be recommending a small capacity petrol engine. Anyway, let's get started. And we are starting strong. Hyundai i10. A lot of people overlook these, these in the Picantos, and they really shouldn't. I don't know if it's the badge that does it. Clean, efficient, nice little cars. I've driven a few. I actually done a full buyer's guide on one of these as well. And yeah, they're great little cars. A few odd little quirks to them, like you get a rattle from the back seat that drives owners insane. It's quite easily fixed if you know how. I can drop it in the description beneath the buyer's guide, that is, and go off and watch it after this video. But really good little cars overall. The main issue that plagued these, and it was generally the earlier ones, a lot of them have been fixed now, is they had a really juddery clutch. So as you took off, more so when the cars were cold, the clutch would judder horribly. That, and I also recall, I've just remembered, a couple of these I've driven over the years, they've all had the thing where you go into reverse and it kind of crunches or is hesitant. If you do drive one of these, you're thinking about buying one, and you notice it's a bit hesitant to go into reverse, try selecting another gear before you go for reverse, and it smooths it right out. And also, don't sweat it. As I say, the ones that I've driven, they all seem to do it. Never had a problem with them. So yes, absolutely, Hyundai i10, get it on the short list. No show-stopping problems. Couple of little quirks to them, but no reason to avoid them. Next up, Citroen C1. Right, this is going to be a very engine-dependent purchase. We can see here it's got the 1 litre VTI. Now that's a good thing, because you could also get these with the 1.2 litre PureTech engine. That's the one from Peugeot, and it was a horrible engine. Pure crap, as they're known in the industry. Excuse the French, but they really were bad. They've got that wet timing belt. It's running through the hot oil. It disintegrates. It blocks the oil pipes and such, and yeah, you're on a new engine before you know it. Very similar to the Ford EcoBoost engines, so yeah, just do not go there. In summary, the little Citroen C1, great little car. Don't get me wrong here, if it's got the 1 litre engine, yes, absolutely, get that on the short list. They are like super minis, small cars, like the i10, if that's okay for you, then yes, this should be near the top of your list. You can group this along with, well, you got the C1, the 107, and you've also got the iGo as well. You can group them all together. Fantastic little super minis, but make sure you get the right engine. And in this case, the 1 litre, yeah, that'd be fine. The 1.2, absolutely not. And lo and behold, have a look at what we've got here. The offender that I'm speaking of. We've got a Peugeot 208. I'm not even going to click it. Nice little cars, you know that, but you just cannot touch them with a barge pole when they've got that 1.2 in them. Again, as I say, it's got that wet belt, brakes up, you're on a new engine before you know it. You will get people kind of like you do in the EcoBoost circles that still defend them, big advocates of them. I don't know why. They'll say if you service them on the dot and you use the right oil and you take them to the certain garages to get them serviced and stuff, they'll be alright. But no, the failure rate is still way too high. So I would not go there. I've seen them perfectly maintained, very well taken care of, serviced on the dot, the whole bit, and they still go wrong, cost the owner a fortune. So there's absolutely no way I'm going to be recommending a 208 with that 1.2 PureTech to you. Now, I did make a video recently, just a little side note here. There is a manufacturer in Europe who are working on a conversion kit for these to move them onto a timing chain. Now again, that doesn't mean you should go out and buy one of these, but it does mean if you've got one of them, you're maybe having problems with it, it might be a valid option. I'll keep things updated on that. I'm going to release videos as we get more updates. So if you are interested, there's another case for hitting that subscribe button. Next up, Fiat 500. I really like these little cars. I do. I know it's one of these. It's a bit Marmite. You're either going to be seen in one or not seen dead in one. I like them. Italian, quirky, and yeah, really quite reliable as well. This one's got the little 1.2 engine, as we can see. So you're either going to find them, they're going to have this 1.2, great little engine, been around for donkey's years, very refined at this point. You generally don't have any problems, and if you do have a problem, it's very cheap to fix. The other engine that you might see them with is that 0.9, I believe, 20er engine. Now that might sound a bit scrawny on paper, a 0.9 sub 1 litre engine, even though it is a small car, but it's not. The 20 is a great little engine as well, not quite as fuel efficient as the 1.2, but because it's got a turbo, it's very torquey, and it also sounds like a big Vespa. Again, that engine itself is a bit Marmite. I've seen people not like them very much. They don't like the way they sound, but I think they suit the car down to a T. Little strummy 3-cylinder type warble noise. I really like them. Fiat 500s in general, well, it's got that Italian flair, doesn't it? The Italian quirks. The door handle might sort of come undone and fall off a bit. Some of the interior, the cabin can rattle and trims can come a little bit loose, but it's kind of part of the character. Again, the big message here is no show-stopping problems. You'll get the little quirks, but there's nothing that's going to put a hole in your wallet. Well, very unlikely anyway. We've got a Fiat Fiorano. How did that slip in here? Not really a small car, so we'll skip over that. Next up, a Ford Fiesta 1 litre EcoBoost. What do we think of that, folks? What do you think? Would you buy that? No, absolutely not. The 1 litre EcoBoost engine, as I mentioned, very similar to that 1.2 PureTech. It's just not worth it. Again, you get advocates of these. Oh, if you service them on time, if you use this certain oil, you'll be all right. But no, just don't go there. Your money is better spent elsewhere, and you're not going to end up without a car while it's going, getting a new engine put in it. So absolutely not. Those engines, by the way, you'll find them in the Focuses in this price range as well, along with a few other models. So be wary. Keep your head on a swivel for that 1 litre EcoBoost. Next, Hyundai i20. A conflicting one, especially this. Let's have a look at it. So the first big issue with these i20s, again, it was more so the early ones and the light coloured ones. This would probably qualify for that. They had these massive paint patches that would fall off them. It was bizarre. I don't know if something went wrong in the factory, the way that they were finishing them, or something got under that paint, moisture, I don't know. But these big patches would fall off. It was really quite unsightly. I'll put a photo up to let you see what I mean. I've never seen it on any other car. This one, obviously, is clean and tidy. It's well presented by this dealer, isn't it? But the other slightly more sinister problem, just something to be aware of, after 100,000 miles, you can sometimes see these with timing chain tensioner problems. So again, just be wary of that. If you're buying it now, it's on, like 40,000 miles. As long as it's been serviced and looked after, chances are it's not going to be an issue for now. But again, there's probably better alternatives out there, and we'll come on to those as we go through this video. The other thing that I'm going to do in this video as well, if we don't come across the cars that I would specifically go out my way to recommend, I'm going to add that on at the end. A few of you asked for that in this style of video that I've done in the past. It's a fair point, so I'll do exactly that if we don't happen to come across them. Would you look at that? A little Ford Ka. I think this is featured in a previous video, actually. It's been for sale a little while. I think it might be the colour that's putting people off. What do you think? Would you drive that? It's a bit yellow, isn't it? But good little cars. I tell you what, a lot of people will be put off by these, because when you say a Ford Ka, certainly if you're of my era or a little bit older than me, this is probably the one that you think of, the little bubble car that had the exposed metal and stuff. These were actually great to drive. I really like these little cars, but by the end, they were all rotten as pears, weren't they? Anyway, the reason that I mentioned that is they were tiny. They were super mini size cars. Bear in mind, these are not. A lot of people are off-put by Ford Kas nowadays because they think it's going to be too small, but they're not. These are sized kind of like a Mark 6 Fiesta was. So a mid-2000s Fiesta, that's probably about the size that you're getting here now. And again, nice little cars. They look great. And also, I didn't notice, but has this got the right engine in it? Yeah, so it's got the 1.2 VCT. Now, I'm certain that's the higher power output one. So you could get one with about 85 horsepower, which I believe this one is. I'd need to double check to be totally sure, but I'm sure the VCT is. The other engine was only about 60 or so horsepower, so it was a little bit lethargic. This is the one to go for. That is a nice little car. I'm surprised that's hanging about and no one snapped it up. As I say, I think it's probably just down to the colour. Anyway, bit of a shame. Right, what have we got next? Fiat Ibiza. Right, this is a good one. I'm glad this has came up. Let's talk about it a little bit because people have asked me in the past about these cars and they've got it all wrong. So let me tell you the problem. If you look at this, it's a 1.4 TSI. No problem with that. The issue is older Ibizas used to have a 1.4 TSI twin-charged engine. Now, this is the engine that had the supercharger and the turbocharger. It was a very ambitious little engine, great power, good fun to drive. I've driven a couple of them, but just about no reliability. They were terrible. Problems with the timing chain, problems with the timing chain tensioner, the supercharger, the turbo, problems with the gearbox. They were riddled with issues. So what we've ended up with is people who maybe don't know this range so well, they look at it, they go, oh, a Fiat Ibiza with a 1.4 TSI, or a best steer clear. Even if you Google this, there's people telling you, oh no, avoid that with a barge pole. The thing is, these later 1.4s are fine. They're nowhere near as problematic as that old 1.4 twin-charged engine was. There's two of them. You've got this, the Eco TSI, and you've also got the 1.4 ACT. Now, it's essentially the same engine. The difference is that ACT engine has got cylinder deactivation. This one doesn't. So what you end up with is a really rather smart, nice driving little car. And I think the values, they've probably suffered a bit, to be honest, because of this confusion with the 1.4 twin-charged engine. But yeah, it's just the way it is. Bit of a shame, really. Now, regardless of what one of these cars you're buying, one thing I'll say here is make sure that you do an HPI check, because it's one thing to read the description. You really need an HPI check to check for if the car's got any finance on it, if it's been a write-off at some point. I'm sure you know, if you've purchased cars before, you know that. Now, if you haven't done an HPI before or looking for a new service provider to do such a thing, then consider this one here, Vehicle Score. This is the one that I'll always use. The reason I always use it is it gives you a lot of the information for completely free, and it gives you information that not every single service does. Things like when the last V5 document was issued. So you can see if the owner's just got a V5 document issued, you know he probably bought it a month, 2 months ago. You can set the alarm bells ringing. Now, if you are going to buy that car, make sure you do purchase a paid HPI report, because it's the only way to get the full background on that car. I'm going to add a 15% discount voucher and link in the description below. So if you are serious about buying it, make sure you purchase one of these. Make sure your next car's a good one. Right, let's see what else we got. Ford Focus 1 litre EcoBoost. Can we all say it at the same time, folks? No, we're not going there. Right, so Fiat Panda 1.2. Right, that's good, it's got the 1.2. So the earlier Fiat Pandas, be aware of this, they had a 1.1 litre engine. And although it wasn't super common, it would be something I'd be advising you of. They could have some wiring problems. The 1.2 did not have these same problems, though. Going to be very similar to that Fiat 500. If you like the 500s, you're probably going to like that. It's a little bit taller, a little bit more cabin space. If you're alright with Italian quirkiness, then yeah, get that on the short list. Why not? There's a Fox there. Ah, right, okay, they've put it in as an ad. You're not going to buy that on this budget. Next up, Volkswagen Up. Kind of like the replacement to the Fox, the modern equivalent, the $5,000 equivalent, if you like. And these were good little cars as well. And look at that, it still looks quite funky, doesn't it? Good alternative to the Fiat 500. Now, the only thing I would say there is about this. So if you are going to go and view one of these, then if you can ask the seller to let you see it from cold. So you want the car to be stone cold, not having been started that day, and see how easily it goes into first gear and goes into reverse. There was a tiny spring on the clutch. Can't remember the exact part name for it, but there's a little spring on the clutch that breaks, tiny little part, and it causes difficulty for going into first and reverse, but only noticeable when cold. So if that's been a savvy seller, maybe he'll, well, not a savvy seller, just a bit of a scummy seller, let's be honest. If he's warmed the car up before you've got there, you're never going to know. So try and view an Up from cold. Otherwise, good little cars, good little 1 litre, very fuel efficient. Not exactly a motorway mile muncher, but then none of these cars are. Get it on the shortlist if you like the look of that and prefer it to the Fiat 500. Vauxhall Corsa van, you probably don't want a van. Another Fiat 500. Volkswagen Golf, right, so it's got the 1.4 TSI. Not as problematic as the twin-charged 1.4 TSI that I was referring to earlier when we were talking about the Seats, but of the same era, sort of related engine if you like. Can see the occasional timing chain and timing chain tensioner problem, so honestly, no, I wouldn't recommend that to you. Next, Kia Picanto. It's very similar to the i10, isn't it? You can basically pick your styling. I've always felt like the i10s feel a little bit roomier inside. I don't know if that's just me, but yeah, one and the same. The only thing on these Picantos, I have known a few people with sticky brakes on them, particularly the rear brakes, so just check that. When you go and view the car, make sure they're not squealing their head off on that test drive or is hesitant to get moving. But yeah, otherwise, great little cars. Little tanks, as they're known. What we got? Another Fiat 500, a smart Forfour. Okay, there's an interesting choice. Quirky. Look, a few little asterisks on this one. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but these are actually rear engines. Yeah, just like a Porsche 911. So I wonder if they've included a photo of it. Probably not, because it wasn't exactly a big selling point, because it means anything that you put in this boot is going to get cooked. Anything you don't want getting cooked, you need to move it into the back seat, because the engine sits right under this boot floor here, so anything in there is going to get hot. Now, this is another car that if I was buying it, I would ask the seller to keep it cold for me arriving. Reason being, it was more so the automatics, but some of them could be hellishly lurchy from cold. When they heated up, they were alright, but they were really lurchy whilst they were still cold, whilst they were still getting up to temp. So yeah, I'd definitely be asking the seller, keep it cold for you arriving. I'm also quite shocked there. Look how Fiat 500-esque that interior is. It's very similar, isn't it? I guess they knew what kind of market they were going after with the 4.4. Alright, so a Ford Focus 1litre EcoBoost, just beat it. Nope. Vauxhall Corsa, nope. Hyundai i10, well, we already spoke about one of them. Fiesta, 1litre EcoBoost. C1, 1.2 PureTech. You can see why I make these videos, because the place is just littered with cars that would have you wallowing in buyer's remorse. And these really would. Things like that. What? I mean, look at that. That's a 1litre EcoBoost Cat S for $5,000. No, in the 1.2 PureTech, not a chance. There is a little iGo there. It's in there as an ad because it's a little bit lower priced. You'd maybe get the new shape iGo, maybe, possibly. Anyway, my point here is it's starting to get a bit samey, isn't it? It's Fiat 500s and i10s galore. So what I'll do at this point is let me switch over and show you some of the cars that if I had £5,000 would certainly be on my short list. They're cars that haven't come up in this list, but I would definitely be considering them. First up, Honda Civic. It's just going to do what you need it to do. Okay, granted, I can already hear the comments section. Civic isn't a small car anymore. Okay, I hear where you're coming from. It used to be a bit smaller, the EP3s, the old bread van shape, remember those? And the FN2s, spaceships as they were known. These were smaller, these were more compact, granted. They are a little bit larger, but if you're okay with that, if you can live with that, then, I mean, these cars are just going to do everything you need them to do. Not that, don't buy the hybrid. But something like a 1.8 petrol, yeah, bang on. They just don't go wrong. Typical Honda reliability on these. In that same breath, I could also recommend a Jazz. Now, little asterisks on this. If we're looking at a budget of £4,000 or £5,000, yes, absolutely, a Jazz needs to be on the shortlist. Superbly reliable cars, absolutely fantastic. But if you were on a lower budget, if it was £1,000 or £2,000 cars we were looking at here, I'd say be cautious, because rust is the killer of many of these Jazzies, and you'd be seeing a lot of rust on the £1,000 or £2,000 models. Well, that's the problem. Maybe you wouldn't until the next MOT. The car gets condemned, and then you're out of pocket. Uneconomical effects. That's happened to a lot of people. But certainly, £5,000, £4,000 or £5,000, you can pick any colour Jazz you like. Basically, these are going to be in good shape. The one thing I would say on them, they came with a manual and automatic gearbox. Now, little word of caution on the automatics. It's not a massive issue, but some of them did come with that I-shift gearbox. The older ones, they had a CVT gearbox, which was pretty good. Could get a little bit juddery, but there was ways in which you could fix that. The one that replaced it, Honda moved to this I-shift gearbox, and it wasn't a true automatic. It didn't have a torque converter, but at the same time it wasn't a CVT. What it was an automated manual gearbox. So essentially what this comes down to, as you're driving along, you get a little pause as it changes gear. So it'll manually engage the clutch. It'll change the gear just like you would be with a gear stick. Disengage the clutch and you're off again. So that manifested in the little head bob and pause. Basically, if you're buying one of these from early 2010s on this kind of budget, or up to sort of mid 2010s, and it's an automatic, just double check what gearbox it's got fitted. No reason to avoid them. They can be a little bit pricier when they go wrong, these I-shifts, but I quite like the way they drive. I do quite like them. Final car that I would recommend, no big surprise here, it's a no-frills car, but superbly reliable, versatile, practical, alright to drive, not exactly soul-stirring, but that's not what we're after on a $5,000 super reliable budget. It's the Toyota Yaris, and of course it's going to be on this list. Even for a bit less, you're still going to manage to get a good one of these. Again, kind of similar to the Jazzies. Just be careful on the rust front. Make sure you do get a good check over. Use that vehicle score check to have a look. Make sure there's no big rust advisories on previous MOTs. But as I say, on this budget, you should be all right. Now, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, do hit that subscribe button, do hit the like button, and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll see you for the next one.